Hey, what's up you guys? It's Ruthie and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to go into chapter 21 of 113 Minutes by James Patterson and Max Delalo. So let's get right into this video. If you do not wish to continue, I suggest you click off the video now because there's going to be foul language and sensitive topics. So let's get started reading. 6 minutes and 30 seconds. He was on to them. After Mason hung up this morning with a colleague in the FBI's Digital Evidence Laboratory's Forensic Audio, Video, and Image Analysis Unit based in Quantico, he couldn't help but punch the air in excitement. Another one of his haystack in a needle territory hunches, as prickly Texas Ranger Kim might call it, had paid off in spades. While local and federal agents searched for the man with the long white hair and the UT baseball hat who was caught on the tape buying the Halloween masks, Mason turned his attention to the phone call that led him in the first place. It had come in through the FBI's national tip line, which, in order to encourage informants to be as forthcoming as possible, was supposed to be completely anonymous. To many agents' frustration, it actually was. The Bureau had plenty of other sneaky practices and used lots of maneuvers, strategies, and technologies that the public was intentionally misled about, but when it came to the anonymous hotline, the protocol was all airtight. Calls were recorded but could never be traced back to the specific number or location. The phone system was deliberately stripped of the capability altogether just in case any overzealous agent ever got the idea to try, which was fine by Mason. He understood the reason for the policy and respected it. He was always a play-by-the-rules kind of agent anyway. To do otherwise, he felt, was sloppy and reckless. Mason was clever, creative, incredibly thorough. He was meticulous. At times, he could be almost obsessive. But he always followed proper procedure, always. That's how his career rose so high so fast. As important as this case was, it wasn't going to be any different. So Mason couldn't trace the anonymous call. That didn't mean he couldn't listen to it very, very closely. 3 big clues jumped out right away. The male caller spoke in a whisper but had the same distinct West Texas accent as the robbers. Second, an approaching train whistle could be heard in the background. Third, the call ended with the unmistakable chunk of a plastic handset being hung up in a metal cradle, which was excellent news. It meant the call was likely made from an old payphone, not a cell. That meant it was made in public. That meant possible witnesses. Mason and his team got to work. They reached out to Amtrak and every private rail transport company in the Southwest. They carefully mapped the exact locations of every single train in the West Texas on the date and time, 3:19 p.m. the call was placed. Then they cross-referenced the locations of all the region's working payphones. There are so few of them left in the service, this provided a lot easier than they thought. Before long, they narrowed it down to 3 possible payphones in Gaza, Dawson, and Scurry counties. Forensic teams were dispatched. They pulled hundreds of different prints off the Gaza and Dawson phones, but only about a dozen from the Scurry one, located outside a grungy shell station, which suggested to Mason it had fairly recently been wiped clean. He instructed an agent to place and record a similar call from that payphone at precisely 3:19 the following day, making sure to include the approaching train whistle and hanging up noise for digital analysis. Just this morning, a tech from the FBI's cutting-edge audio lab back in D.C. phoned Mason to tell him that with a statistical certainty of 96.3% the sounds were the same. That was the Mason Randolph way, deliberate, methodical, successful. Mason had been driving along I-20 for the past 3 hours, an endless stretch of flat brown desert in every direction, not unlike the surface of the moon. But right now he's crouching next to a bit of shrubbery growing along the side of the highway. His vehicle is pulled over on the shoulder, its hazards lights blinking. Something in the underbrush caught his eye, and he simply had to stop. With a competitive sigh, Mason places the item into a large plastic evidence bag, careful not to disturb it. He stands, wearing mirrored aviator sunglasses, but still has to squint. The blinding midday sun is this damn bright. Back in his SUV, the evidence bag sitting in the passenger seat next to him, unsealed. 2 gross violations of FBI policy the agent typically reveres. Mason is nearing the end of his drive. He's on his way to Scurry County to rendezvous at the Shell station with some fellow agents already following up leads and interviewing possible eyewitnesses. But when Mason turns off exit 174, he passes a sign that reads Big Spring, Howard County, not Scurry. In fact, he passed the Scurry exit some 80 miles ago and kept on going. Mason parks his SUV in front of a well-kept double-wide mobile home situated on a modest plot of trimmed grass. He gets out, taking the plastic evidence bag with him. He rings the doorbell. He waits. The door finally opened by a petite, kindly woman of 72 with long gray braids. "Mason, is it really you?" She stands frozen, her jaw hanging open in total surprise. I don't believe it. Hey, Ma." Mason engulfs his mother in a tight embrace. Pamela Randolph practically squeals with delight. When their hug finally ends, she takes a step back, dabbing away happy tears. She gives her son a long look, the tailored suit, the shiny FBI badge on his belt, the dazzling smile. "My handsome little boy, you don't look half bad yourself." Pamela playfully swats at Mason, then turns around and calls into the trailer, "Joe, come quick, Mason's here." "Who?" A voice hollers back roughly. "Mason! You tell that bastard whatever he's selling, we don't want it." The tiniest tense pause, then Mason and Pamela both burst into laughter. It's an old family joke. Years ago, when Mason was barely out of the academy, he was stuck working a major white-collar case in Houston over the holidays. It didn't look like he'd be able to make it home in time for Christmas, but after driving across the state for 7 hours straight, Mason arrived just as his family was sitting down to Christmas Eve dinner. Since his cell phone had died, all he could do was ring the bell and pound on the door, which his father at first refused to answer, thinking it must be carolers or donation seekers or some kind of exponentially rude traveling salesman. All these years later, the joke was still trotted out any time Mason showed up at his childhood home unannounced. Sure, it had gotten a little cheesy at this point, a little predictable, but Mason didn't mind it at all. Consistency, dependability, steadfastness. These were qualities he loved so much, and his parents, married 51 years, "Don't just stand there, silly. Come in, come in." It breaks Mason's heart, but he has to decline. "Wish I could, but I'm working. I just stopped by to give you these." Mason removes the contents of the evidence bag, and Pamela's eyes light up. It's a loose bouquet of local wildflowers picked along the roadside, brown-eyed Susans, mountain pinks, black-footed daisies, white asters. As she takes them with a giant smile, Joe Randolph totters up to the doorway slowly because of his arthritis and the oxygen tank he's got to wheel along with him, but quick as he can because his son is there. "Gosh, it's good to see you," he says, pulling Mason into a bear hug. "You too, Pop. How you feeling?" Joe shrugs. Like his son, he's not one to complain, no matter how hard life gets. "I didn't think we'd get to see you for another 2 weeks," he says, changing the subject away from his health. "Let me guess, you got a case nearby?" Mason nods. "Chasing down a lead in Scurry County, thought I'd stop in." "Well, we're so glad you did," Pamela says, her eyelids still fluttering with joy. Then Joe's expression turns serious. He grips Mason's shoulder, his grasp trembling from age, but still firm as iron. He looks his son dead in the eyes. "Whoever you're after, whatever they've done, you gonna catch 'em?" "Pop, you bet I am." That is the end of this chapter. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.